UNO has always been an expanding university, constantly moving forward. But as we move forward, we must also look back to where we began. Let's go back in time with the people who remember UNO the way it was. Join us for Reflections in Time.
It's a fall day in October 1990, and as I've often done with these particular tapes we make for history of our university, I'm in the Health, Physical Education and Recreation building here at UNO, and it's an interesting period for me. Over the years we've acquired the tapes from 60 to 70 people who have reflected on their time and the people and observations generally about the university. It's been interesting. And it's something we're trying to keep in our alumni house and in our university library. And as time goes along, perhaps too, some young enterprising graduate assistant will go into a program of computer activity that'll draw parts of thought patterns out from all of the tapes that'll be easy to find in terms of indexing them. In any event, today's a special day for me because I have with me a friend I've worked with at our university and known as a friend for 30-some years. We were trying to decide before we began the tape how long that was. Dr. Gale Oleson from the College of Education, who spent most of his life here at the university, I think, in the area of counseling.
That's right, Paul.
But Gale, as long as I've known you, and let's start it that way, I don't think I've ever asked you about Gale's beginnings. When I knew you, you were living here in Omaha and working at the university. You were here as I came to the university.
You want to go back before that?
Way back. Where was home? As you
home was in South Dakota.
Oh.
And I was anxious to go to the Second World War, and I did. And they sent me to college at St. Ambrose and Northwestern. And then I went into teaching back in my home state of South Dakota.
Oh, high school teaching?
Mm-hmm.
What area were you in as a teacher?
Well, in those days, there was a shortage of teachers, and you had to teach what there wasn't anyone else to teach. So I taught a great variety of things, math primarily, and social sciences. Then I tried administration, and then I went out to the University of Wyoming and got a doctorate degree in 1953 in guidance and counseling.
Before you get any farther with that, Gale, I was going to go back a little and ask you, it sounded like you got on a teaching track almost right away. Did you come from a family in which there were teachers?
Oh, yes.
Were you a farm boy, town boy, what?
Town boy. My mother taught school, and I went to school probably because of her, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And my aunt and my uncle were both school teachers, and my mother-in-law was a school teacher, and my
so you
wife
were surrounded.
Yeah, I came from a long line of teachers.
So I interrupted you there, and let's go back to the University of Wyoming.
The University of Wyoming, and I graduated in '53, and I thought I'd try industry. So a baking company in Omaha offered me a job, and I moved to Omaha in 1953.
Well, that's how you got to Omaha.
Yeah.
Which baking company?
Omar.
Omar.
The door-to-door baking company.
Yeah.
And the university was growing quite rapidly in those days, and they had an opening, and I'd spent 2 years in industry, and it wasn't satisfying to me. I was idealistic at that point in my life, and I thought I wanted to do more than work to make a profit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when the university had an opening, I applied for it and was fortunate enough that they took me on March 1st, 1955.
You know, that's a long time ago, Gale.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you can remember who or what was your first contact with the University of Omaha.
Oh, Mabel L. Beyond any
Mine
shadow
too,
of a doubt.
Yeah.
Because he was the leader and so forth. In fact, I'm reasonably sure that Milo hired me and told Frank Gorman and J.B. McGregor that I was going to work for them.
Yeah, that happened with a lot of people.
I think
they found out after the fact, although they might have been your boss.
Yeah.
Because the boss was, in those days,
he did all the hiring and that kind of thing.
So a couple of years in industry and you said, hey, this isn't what I really want to do.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
And you came out here then in '55.
In '55.
And
worked in the Counseling and Testing Center.
Yeah, was that an activity? Who ran that operation in those days? Was that one of the things that Dean Thompson had his finger in?
No. Dean Thompson was over in the psychology department, and the Dean of Arts and Sciences.
Right.
And Davis was the director of that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and he didn't stay long after that.
No.
And then I became the director of it. The people that I really enjoyed in those first years were J.B. McGregor was just a wonderful human being.
I'll add an underline to that.
He was the dean of students, and I learned a great deal from him. And as I went through the school annuals, kind of preparing for the jogging my memory a little bit, I was surprised that he retired in 1960, because his influence on me seems a lot longer and a lot deeper than 5 years.
Same with me.
He just a
wonderful man.
Yes, he was. He was a gentleman and a scholar.
He was sort of Mr. Academia. He looked the part even.
Oh, that's right. And he dressed the part.
Yeah. Now, you've made a few observations there about people, and we'll come back to that. But I was wondering, you know, the campus, as we came over here to record today, we're used to it now this way. But if you hadn't been here on campus since the day you first came to work, you wouldn't be able to find your way anywhere, would you?
Oh, no.
What were the highlights of the campus in 1955, physically?
Well, you remember, the library was in the Arts and Science Building.
Right.
And the cafeteria was in the Arts and Science Building. And they had just finished the field house and moved the basketball court out of that building. And the student cafeteria was what we called the shack.
Yes.
Little white wooden building out behind what I call the administration building. It's now called the Arts and Science Building.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So we weren't, we had some nice grass, but we didn't have any buildings.
No. And one of the things that happened in there was Milo and the Board of Regents accumulated enough money to build a library. And they got the library built. And
part of that was a gift from the hotel man.
No, wait just a minute.
Oh, sorry.
Wait just a minute.
You're going to get to it.
That's right. They had the tax dollars to pay for that building.
Did they?
And they built it. And after they got it built, Gene Epley came out, or Milo and Gene Epley got together.
Yeah.
And Gene said, Milo, I'll pay for that building. And he gave Dr. Bale enough money to pay for the library. And Dr. Bale just turned right around and took that money and built the Student Center.
That's how we got the Student Center money.
That's how we got the Student Center.
Now, I don't know on tape if we have it quite that way to this point. That's interesting, Gale.
I'm reasonably sure that my facts are straight.
I think you're right, too. I've heard something about it, but not in that great detail.
And that, of course, raised everyone's feelings and respect for Milo, that he could go into the business community and get enough money. The figure I want to remember is $1 million. That Gene Epley gave him $1 million to pay for the library.
Well, whatever it was in those days, it was worth a lot more than it is now, and it's a lot of money.
Yeah. And then I don't know, within 1 or 2 years, Milo was named and crowned King of Exarban.
Right.
And that also created a great deal of respect in our minds for him.
Well, it helped tie us to the business community.
That's right.
And social community more heavily than we had been in the past, don't you think? And that was an interesting period. Another thing about that you haven't mentioned, you know, now we've got a student body of about 15,000, 16,000 people day and night. It wasn't that big then, was it? Well,
I looked that up today. I called archives, and it's hard for me to believe that we had as few as, I think it was, well, I'll have to look. It was 1,894 full-time students, and a little more than that in part-time students.
So we were under 4,000 total.
That's right, about 4,000 total in 1955. And then I also got the figures from the University Relations. 12 years later, we were up to 10,000.
Wow.
We'd gone up 500%.
That is tremendous. In 10 years.
But those were the baby boomers. You see, from 55, when I came and you came about that time, we were starting to get the baby boomers, and we were really growing in enrollment.
And we had the bootstrappers and all those people.
Right. I think they made up a great percentage of that 2,000 College of Continuing Studies.
There was a time when that was big. That was big.
But the full-time students at that point were the traditional high school graduates.
Yeah. But wasn't that the time, too, when our night enrollment almost exceeded our daytime?
It did.
Yeah, but a little bit at least.
But those people only took one course.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the traditional students were taking what we called a full load, so a great deal more of our energy and our teaching time was spent with the undergraduates.
Yeah, just the numbers of people, though. It was heavily on the evening adult education program. The campus wasn't big then, and the enrollment wasn't big then, and the college that you came into wasn't so big either, or the department, was it?
No.
Tell us a little about that, Gale.
Well, let's see. I guess I'd start with Dean McGregor, because he was such a great person. He had Don Flaster as an associate dean, and Mary Purdue Young as associate dean. And I was telling you about Milo's respect on the outside of the university, and a lot of respect inside too. But his style of administration was autocratic, so he came under a lot of faculty criticism.
That's putting it mildly, almost.
for his autocratic methods. And Mary Purdue Young had a hearing loss and was wearing a hearing aid, and Milo would get to his autocratic methods of delivering speeches to the faculty, and she'd just turn him off.
The advantage of having a hearing disadvantage.
But Dean McGregor and Don Flaster and Mary Purdue Young just did a great job of making an opportunity for the undergraduates to have a collegiate atmosphere when they came out here. They were promoting the sororities and fraternities, and the unaffiliated students had a great organization at that time.
Yes, they did. And that was a hard thing to acquire, and I think McGregor really spearheaded that because that was his mode. But yeah, for kids to live at home and come out here and to make it really like college.
Right. And I think that you and I came at a very opportune time, because we had the opportunity to meet. You were mentioning Espinoza before we came in, and Espinoza was in foreign language, and Garlow was in biology, and Nell Ward was in chemistry, and Bertha Koch, I think her name was, was in the art department.
Art department.
And Jim Earle was in the math department.
Yeah.
And those people all came not long after the university became a municipal university.
No.
Back in the early 40s, and they were strong academic people, and they were great teachers.
It was remarkable, I think, that all through those years, and I visited some of the people that have been here longer than you or I by far, in terms of when they came, we always had a strong nucleus of faculty back in those days. Tremendously fine people.
And there were a lot of newcomers right then, Paul, that you and I remember. Paul Beck was a relative newcomer. Ed Clark was a relative newcomer. And they were strong faculty members, those young people. I've heard other people, I've watched some of your tapes, and I've heard other people refer to West Dodge High and how they had improved it with the academic or the administrative structure. And my perception of that term is different. I think we've always had a strong academic structure here.
Yes.
The term West Dodge High, in my perception, came from the high school students going to high school and living at home and going home to eat and going home to sleep, and they went to college and they continued to go home to eat and go home to sleep. And so it was easy to say it's just a continuation of high school, even though the academic structure was completely different.
Yes. And I think the other factors that you mentioned a moment ago with McGregor and Flaster and those people, and the clubbing that was done and the groups helped to make it much more of a college atmosphere than just the class and the lab work. That was an interesting period. It really was. But like you said too, when we were talking about the physical development of the campus, you know, you could spend the whole day in our building over there, and wouldn't have to worry about the rain or the snow. It was all there together.
I was in the counseling department, and I thought that one of the responsibilities of a person in the counseling department was get acquainted with the faculty. So I always went down to the coffee room.
And that was the place.
On the first floor at coffee time in the morning, and I could call every faculty member by name within I think the first year that I was here. I got acquainted down in that coffee room and in the lunchroom.
Yeah, coffee in the morning and lunchtime. If you missed anybody there, it was unusual.
That's right.
Everybody'd show up at some time during that period, and it was you know, the term is overused, family atmosphere, but I think we kind of had that.
Well, and we were, except for the physical education people that were in the field house, we were all in one building.
Yeah.
So you could have coffee with people from every department on campus. And it was a great experience.
Oh, yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you, too, Gale, as we come into the beginnings of this and carry it on through to today when you're still active in the counseling area, when we talk about counseling and what you were doing in your area of the college of education, what sorts of things were you involved with, and how has it changed over the years, or hasn't it changed, the counseling activity? Were we training people to be counselors? Were we counseling them? Was it both? What?
Well, both. Both. I have always been active in both sides of that. My training at Wyoming, and I guess my interest, was in career educational counseling.
Oh, yeah.
So when I came here, I spent a great deal of time helping primarily freshmen and sometimes sophomores and juniors come to grips with where they were going in college, you know, what they wanted to major in and what they wanted to do. I used to say, and I think it's true, that half of them didn't know what they were going to do or why they were here, you know. And then over in the College of Education, we had a guidance department. No, we didn't either. We taught guidance courses.
Yeah.
And you could get a degree in education with an emphasis in guidance and counseling. And then someplace in the mid-60s, we became a department of guidance and counseling. And
Or did the emphasis change then?
no, but that was in the preparation, and we primarily trained school counselors.
Mm-hmm.
Most of our students was in the College of Education, and they were school counselors. Over the years, that's changed somewhat, in that nearly half of the students in our department now are what we classify as agency counselors.
What does that mean?
That means they go out into the community without an educational background and work in the Boys Club or the YWCA or the mental health centers.
Not academic groups.
That's right.
Yeah.
Non-academic places. And some of our students specialize in substance abuse, alcoholism, some of them in delinquent children, some of them in gerontology. And they spread out a great deal more now than they did than the school counseling function that we had back in the early times.
Well, that's sort of a natural evolution, isn't it? In most programs, as time and the culture has changed and we've expanded in numbers, we have more jobs available, it seems, in different areas.
Yeah. And some of the people in our department keep thinking we're going to oversupply the market, but we don't seem to. We now have about twice as many people applying to get into our department as we have room for.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's too bad for some of them, but
yes,
it's a nice ad for the department.
It's good for the department.
Yeah.
And but we turn away some very capable people just because we don't have room.
Sure.
They're promising people.
You know, one of the things in what you're saying here points up something that's happened, and we've said it in various ways in these last few minutes, I think, Gale. This university has grown a lot.
Oh, yes.
Tremendously in size, just in numbers, whether they take 6 hours or 15, whatever, but just the number of people that cross our campus and use our buildings. Now, you've been with students here on this campus since the mid-50s. That was a different time, and culture changes. What do you think about students? A student in 55, was he or she like a student in 90? Did they come better? Look at a cross-section there, if you would.
In the 35 years that I've been teaching counseling classes, the best students have been those that have been out in the working facilities, and they've been recognized and identified as people who would be good counselors if they would go and get the training and the experience necessary to do that. And they have been our best students over those years.
Those are often the graduate students?
Right. Those are, and the counselor education has always been at the graduate level. That decision was made back at the federal level back in the late 40s, early 50s.
So they often come out of a teaching background and into...
Well, they came entirely out of a teaching background in those early years, and then in more recent years they come from what we call a behavioral science background. And we take people from a wide variety of backgrounds as long as they've got enough behavioral science courses, and if they don't, then they can go make up those deficiencies and reapply.
The quality of student, I thought in my own life, when I taught a little bit in the 60s, I wasn't teaching, I was doing other things, But that was a period I didn't enjoy teaching very much. It seemed like we had students with different ideals and emphasis then. During those turbulent years, I guess I'd class them. Not that we had a lot of turbulence on this campus.
Yeah.
But
well, we did have some turbulence.
A little bit.
We had a couple sit-ins.
Yeah. Well,
what were those? Let's put those were in the 60s.
Too. Yeah, we did.
And again, Don Flaster gets a great deal of credit for the professional manner in which he dealt with those disruptive years.
Wasn't one of them here in the president's office or something like that?
Yeah, yeah. Getting back to your quality of students, I didn't experience that in the 60s and the 50s because we were at the graduate level, and we had responsible adults coming out to take our courses, and I don't see that much difference in the level of students. We've always had a range of abilities in our counselor education program. Yeah,
but I think you're right. I think at the graduate level you're talking about often
more stability.
More stability and maturity and definite goals rather than a freshman who's hunting.
That's right.
And not sure if he or she ought to even be here, you know, that type of thing. Well, since your role as a teacher really and the students that you taught haven't changed that much, has the field of counseling and guidance, except for the various opportunities that are available, has that changed a lot over the years, or is the basic elements involved still much the same?
It's changed. We've learned a great deal over the years. A number of people in our field have done basic research, and we now know better the kinds of things that are more helpful and the different interventions that we can make to help people. The major change that I see in our profession is that when I was going to graduate school and doing it, we called it, at least I called it, developmental counseling. That we helped people with, I guess I would call smaller problems, or people with developmental concerns, like what to major in, what career to choose, how to be a better parent, those kinds of things. And now there's an increasing number of our students who want to do what I classify as remedial counseling. They want to help people recover from alcoholism, or recover from an eating disorder, or we have some of our students in the criminal justice area dealing with people who have made mistakes in their life and they don't want to continue to make those kinds of mistakes. And my perception of that is that that's okay. It's difficult to accomplish at the master's degree level, and one of the things that helps is that I encourage our students to specialize with a kind of population that they want to work with. And then if they specialize and spend all of their independent study and all of their projects and their practicum sites and their internship sites in that kind of a setting, then I think they've got a better chance to be successful with that special population.
So specialty is the thing.
I think so.
Which is true in so many fields, of course.
Sure.
Where we had generalists years ago, now we have lots and lots of specialists. You know, one of the things I was thinking about that you and I have lived through, when we came here in the 50s, this was the University of Omaha, supported in good measure by tax dollars from our citizens.
2 mil levy.
Right. And
we tried 3 or 4 times unsuccessfully to get that 2 mils increased.
That didn't go. So we had the merger. And if you recall, remember that period in the 60s, Gale, when the discussion in the coffee room and at lunch centered around what in the world was going to happen and whether we liked it or didn't like it, and things were a mess as far as we were concerned. We didn't get the money from the city, and now what's going to happen to this place? Remember that period?
I remember a man came in here after Milo retired named Trawick.
Yeah.
And he was caught in the middle of that turmoil.
He was president for 1 year, really, and so on. That was a turbulent period.
That's right.
People like Terry Carpenter said, hey, get your act together and get merged, is what he said, wasn't he? What did you think about it at the time, when it first really started to rear its head, when it looked like it was imminent? What were your feelings? You'd been here, as I had, a while then.
Yeah. My feelings were that it was a good thing to happen to this university, because the alternative was to support the university on a tuition basis, and that would have made us a very expensive private school. And I thought, my own feeling on that was that defeated the mission of the University of Omaha, which was to provide an opportunity for Omaha residents to get a college education.
Yeah.
And I didn't want us to become a high tuition private school. So I welcomed the state support. But everything has its negative side. I didn't in the years that followed, I didn't welcome all of the state regulations that we had to deal with and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, life's become a bit more complicated, hasn't it?
It sure has.
Is that the natural thing that goes with large expansion?
I presume so.
Yeah.
The business department, the people. We have accountants watching our accountants now. And Harold Kiefhofer had a couple assistants and could do the whole thing.
I'm glad you mentioned Harold, one of our fond memories of people.
That's right.
And that's one thing I wanted to dwell on for a few minutes, too, as we visit, because you have a wide range of memory for people. I know you won't think of all of them, but let's start with our friend, a man who we looked up to, who was a great guy, and talk about mounting over physical ailments, Harold Kiefhofer.
Mm-hmm.
Any memories of him?
Harold was always a professional and a straight shooter. You never got an evasive answer from Harold. You always got the facts as they were, and he was always willing to share them. He was a very hard worker.
Oh, yes.
And he was always here. You could always depend on him. I thought he was just great in that capacity. And he made a great contribution to the university that some people may not remember. Because he lived in a wheelchair, all of our buildings and all of our classrooms were wheelchair accessible.
Without anything else, that was a great contribution.
That's right. And I give Harold total credit for seeing to it that happened in every building.
An inspiration to people.
Right.
Drove his own car.
You bet.
Refinished his own basement.
That's right.
He could do just about everything.
Mm-hmm.
He was a marvelous man and a great memory for many of us. And one of my regrets is that we don't have him on this series of reflections.
Yeah. Let's talk about another friend, Ed Clark.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Ed Clark was just a bright young man and again, a very hard worker and dedicated. The spring of 1955 when I came, the drama presentation that spring was Oklahoma. And Jim Peterson in the music department did the music, and Ed Clark did the dramatic part of it. And it was just a tremendous show. I couldn't believe that the university that I had joined could do that wonderful a stage production.
Mm-hmm. And they did one of them a year usually.
They did.
At least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did. They put on a musical. The two of them cooperated and put on a musical every year for I don't know how many years that span ran, but several.
Many would say, oh, yeah, I remember Ed Clark. He's the one with the caustic, acidy tongue. What would you say to that, Gale?
Well, I wouldn't classify Ed that way. He might have. He majored in English and speech, I think, and he had an excellent vocabulary.
Indeed, he did.
And he was a genuine intellect. And he might have had a little disdain for some people who didn't meet his expectations. I'm not sure of that. But I never suffered under that.
No.
Under those barbs or that kind of thing.
Oh, he's fun to be around.
Yeah, I thought he was. He was a great storyteller because he could use his drama background and he could,
In fact, you used to be his neighbor.
Yes. Then he moved out in my neighborhood and we became very close friends. And I miss him as a colleague. Well, I miss a lot of those old-timers that we had. It seems to me, Paul, that when we were family, like you talk about, that that had a great deal of appeal for me, to have a community and to be a part of that community and to have interchange.
Yeah, and our wives and family, other than ourselves, often got involved in various university activities too, more so than I think in today's busy world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I went to a funeral, and Elizabeth Hill was there. You remember she was Dean of Women for several
Indeed,
years.
I do, and part of our speech department.
Right. And she said, "Now, Gale, how are the little women?" You know, and I used to take my 4 daughters to those faculty affairs kind of thing.
And she remembered.
And she remembered from those faculty interactions that we had that I was the father of 4 little girls.
She was our last Dean of Women, I think.
I think so. I think we did away with that term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we have her too in our library
Right.
here, and
Yeah.
her reminiscence of many
Yeah.
things.
You asked me to remember some stories of what went on around this university.
Yeah.
And I was remembering some of our traditions, I guess. Wilfred Payne, who you referred to once before in this tape, and I'm sure you've taken, he was the head of our philosophy department, and he was a dyed-in-the-wool, old-time academician.
Oh, indeed so.
And I think the first or second summer I was here, we always wore a suit and tie to work, not a sport coat, you know, always a suit and tie. And I had to go run an errand, maybe to the restroom, maybe to somebody else's office, I don't know. And it was a hot summer day, and I didn't have my coat on. Wilfred stopped me in the hall and said, "Professors wear coats in the hall."
And do you recall he ever called anyone by their first name?
Oh, I don't think so.
Mr. or Professor
Yes.
or whoever?
Oh, yeah.
Very proper.
Yeah.
I can
very
appreciate
proud. Yeah.
saying that, though.
And then related to that dress code, the students had a dress code. And one of the codes was that women could not wear slacks. I had a friend that I'd met in South Dakota, Leo and Darlene, and they had 3 sons about the ages of our 3 daughters. Darlene was a graduate student. And she came over here on a Saturday to study in the library, and it was kind of a drizzly day, and she had on slacks and a raincoat. And the librarian refused. Ellen Lord said, "You can't study in our library," or one of Ellen's employees. "You can't come in the library with slacks on." So Darlene went to the ladies' room and took off her slacks and buttoned up her raincoat, went back in the library and studied and finished what she had to do, and went home. I think that's an excellent story about how ridiculous some of those traditions we had.
As you're talking about that, at this point in time in our city, what you hear on the news in 1990, every night is the discussion about the dress code in public high schools.
That's true. That's true.
But in those days, those things were rather firm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You
Well, they wouldn't let her study in the library.
No.
You know,
No.
they refused entrance to the library.
Any other people that come to mind that there will be a number, perhaps?
Back
Just a few.
to Wilfred Payne.
Yeah.
He had a luncheon group that met once a week that he called the Men of Gold.
The Men of Gold.
And he did it all by his own personal invitation. I was fortunate to be included in that group.
How in the world did you make it?
Well, I didn't participate very much because I was younger than they were, and I was intimidated. But I joined them and listened to them discuss topics, and they'd always have a topic for the day, and it was really a nice activity. But it came under a great deal of fire from other faculty who didn't get invited to join it.
Who didn't get in.
Yeah. And it was, you know, one of those kinds of things. We tried to, Tom Bonner was a great history faculty member here for several years, and he tried a second group, and it never, he couldn't make it go.
Didn't work.
Didn't work, kind of thing.
No.
But I thought it was a good opportunity for professors to get together and discuss topics of current concern. I'm sure that if that group was getting together today, that they'd be talking about the 2% lid.
Yes.
You know, and those kinds of issues.
Now, another man that came to my mind as you were talking about this was your Dean of Education.
Frank Gorman.
Yeah.
Yeah, Frank Gorman was just another gentleman and a scholar, and did a great number of things to help me get started in the profession, and I'll always appreciate Frank Gorman. He was, one time though, another story I can tell you about the dress code. Paul Kennedy and I came the same year. I precede Paul by 6 months. I came in March and he came in September of '55, and he and I have always joked about my seniority over him. And we became friends, and we were in the hall, and I said, "Paul, what do you think of this?" And he said, "Well, I don't know, Gale." And Frank Gorman overheard us, and he called us into his office and said, "Professors don't call each other by first name in the hall." Not in front of students. In your office, it's okay, but not in the hall. And that was, again, that old-time tradition.
Yeah.
Now we think it's a compliment if we call each other by first name.
Yeah.
And if students call me by first name, I think I'm relating better with them.
It's
Aren't those interesting kinds of
how
things
have changed.
that happen?
Yeah, if we just sat in the classroom now and what people wore, professor, the students, everyone, in terms of the dress codes, if we could parade out here a group of pictures, it would take us back. It's different, but some of the same problems exist today. Dress code.
Sure.
What should people be allowed or not allowed to wear? Well, any other people that pop into your head, Gale?
Well, there's so many that it's hard to... I remember one of the... I don't know, maybe you were even invited to do this. Bill Thompson, the Dean of Arts and Sciences and the head of the Psychology Department, came around down in the coffee shop one day, or maybe came to my office, I can't remember, and said, my son-in-law is going to go into the investment business.
I didn't get invited.
If you've got $10,000, he will invest your money.
And Gale said...
And I did not have $10,000. I had 4 small children and faculty salary, and I just looked at him and like, I couldn't believe that he would think I could have $10,000.
Yeah.
His son-in-law is Warren Buffett.
Yes.
You know.
And your 10,000 would now make you independently wealthy.
Multi-millionaire. There were a couple of faculty members I've heard that did have 10,000.
I know of at least 2, yeah.
Yes. I think Jim Earle did. And I think Francis Edwards did.
And Sylvester Williams, I think, got involved.
Oh, did Sylvester Williams get involved in that?
So.
Well, they were fortunate that they could afford that $10,000. Yeah. So that, you know, I've always talked about that as one of the times in my life when things could have been different.
If you had known, you'd run out and tried to borrow 10,000, wouldn't you?
I think a couple of years later, I second mortgaged my house and got $10,000 or $12,000 and bought some apartment houses that didn't make me any money at all.
His timing wasn't right for you.
That's right.
Now,
that's right.
You've really, you know, Gale, spent an awful lot of years here, as I have, and a lot of people have. And the university has changed a lot. But one of the things that we've really been saying here time and again is that it's bigger. And a lot of people might say to you and me, and we might say it to ourselves, well, it used to be better, really, when we were smaller. It was more, it was better. Well, what would you say to that, Gale?
I don't think that's necessarily true. Maybe it was more pleasant, and I thought we had more of an academic spirit, more of a cohesive spirit, when the art department and the history department and the engineering department, you and I can talk about people in all of those departments, Marsh Bull and Bill Hockett and Sylvester Williams and Garlow and Macmillan, you know.
Robbins.
Sure, we can talk about all those people from across the campus, and we knew each other by first name, and I thought that made it more of a community, a collegiate kind of atmosphere that we don't have now, but I don't think it made it any better. I'm very proud of our teaching level and the kinds of things that go on in different departments, and many of the things that you see our faculty doing and accomplishing. I don't think it's better or worse. I think we had great faculty members when I came here, and I think there are great faculty members here now. I think we've just done a great thing in providing Omaha and the people in the Omaha area an opportunity for this kind of education.
And the merger, as you reflected back on it, seemed to be the right thing to do, and you still say so?
Yes, but I've been uneasy being the little brother with the Lincoln campus. I'm strongly in favor of Kearney joining the university system, so we spread the numbers around a little bit, because I think that will be an improvement in higher education. I probably come from a minority view in our campus expanding into a doctoral degree program. I haven't looked at the census figures very recently, but I think Nebraska's a state of about 1.5 million people.
Around there, I think, yeah.
And I'm not sure that 1.5 million people can afford 2 doctoral granting institutions 60 miles apart. Now, and I think we've got faculty members and a population that needs it, like in school administration, and I think that we should just move the doctoral program up here and do some of them here and some of them there, and who makes the decision on where they are, I don't know, but I don't think we can have duplication, because that's a pretty expensive program to get in those doctoral level programs. So some of those problems are going to have to be ironed out.
Another thing they're talking about these days as we record in 1990 is this overall board for all education in the state. Mabel L was talking about that back in the 60s. We still don't have it. What do you think about that?
I think that would probably be an improvement in the coordination of higher education. I think we need a state board to hold a firmer hand on all of the public institutions that offer post-secondary education, because I think the community college, the community technical colleges, are making a significant contribution. But some of them are uneasy. They seem to be uneasy doing what they're doing. They want to become degree-granting colleges and move out of their function of providing technical community kinds of education. And again, in 1.5 million people, I think there needs to be coordination, and so students and citizens can make choices of where they want to go to get different kinds of post-secondary education. And I don't think our state can afford total duplication in all of those areas. I think we need to specialize. We talked about that term a little while ago. And I think that specialization will make it more efficient. I suppose contributing to that would be if dormitories that we're talking about in 1990, we've talked about them most of the years I've been here. If they come to fruition, then I think that will allow citizens from other parts of the state beyond commuting distance to choose to come here, which would be an improvement kind of thing.
Let's leave the campus now for a bit. We've covered that pretty well, I think, and your reflections on that in education. Not too many years ago, and I don't know how many, along with being a professor, you became something of a farmer, didn't you, Gale?
I bought some land between here and Blair, yes. I bought 70 acres out in the country, and it was just that I wanted to have a little more space. South Dakota and Wyoming, my background, had fewer people per square mile, and I like that, and I enjoy a great deal living in the rural district. It's amazing that I can live 17 miles, driveway to parking lot, and live in a completely different community than I do in Omaha. I have wonderful neighbors, wonderful friends, and they value higher education, but they don't participate in it. Some of their children have taken advantage of higher education, but they're just as honest and hardworking and caring a group of people, and it's just fun to have the advantages of what I call both worlds. Yeah,
you live in a couple of worlds, really, don't you?
And you know that you and I interact a great deal with people in our everyday activities, and to me it's been I think a mental health value that I can go out to the country and kind of escape the people and be by myself.
I used to think that about camping, and it's the same thing. You sort of change your environment almost completely in about 20 minutes. Are you a real farmer or are you a gentleman farmer?
I'm a gentleman farmer. I tried real farming with second-hand equipment and so forth, and you can't afford the equipment.
Not today.
And those not today. And my neighbor, who's a middle-aged couple, he's an excellent farmer, and I give him half of what he produces on the farm. Now, he's twice as good a farmer as I am, Paul. He can produce twice as much as I can. So my perception of that is it doesn't cost me anything to have him do it.
No.
He grows twice as much as I do. I get the same amount. I'd be doing it myself, and I don't have to do anything.
I want to let him watch this tape and see if he's going to change his tune.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Sounds like you really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Anything else in life now that you've lived about 40, 30, 60 years or so
Well,
that you like to mention that really stands out in as memorable to you?
as memorable.
Yeah. People, things, activities, whatever.
Well, I had no idea that I was going to stay here 35 years, and you and I talked about that before we started the tape. I don't think you did either.
No.
And I don't think there's any question that it's the faculty colleagues and the atmosphere of this university that has made it fun for me to stay here. And I've, had a number of different assignments, and I've enjoyed them all. Mabel L said when I came here, the best job on campus was a full professor without any committee assignments, and I'm enjoying that.
You finally arrived.
And I'm enjoying that assignment. I've enjoyed my interactions with faculty across the campus, and I have a lot of fond memories of those interactions. But
I asked you once, not on the tape, but I'll ask you here too, aren't you ever going to retire, Gale?
Well, I don't know, Paul. I've decided not to make a decision. My plan is to do it on an annual basis.
Mm-hmm.
The factors in my life are all positive right now. I'm enjoying good health. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm getting good feedback from the students. I'm enjoying the people I'm working with. And if all those factors stay constant, then I don't want to retire. I don't want to give up those pleasant kinds of activities in my life. If any one of those factors change, then of course I have to rethink the formula. And so I've decided I'm eligible to retire.
Sure you are.
And I'm not going to retire this year. What I'm going to do the year after that, I haven't made a decision yet.
Any things you want to do that you haven't been able to accomplish yet?
Oh, yes. Oh, on campus?
Any place.
Well, I want to travel a little bit. I want to go to Denmark.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been able to do that. And I want to enjoy my grandchildren. I've got 2 granddaughters in Omaha and a grandson in Florida.
Oh, too close by, that's nice.
Too close by, and that's nice. And they're very sweet little girls, and I'm enjoying that a great deal. But of course I could enjoy that more if I had more time when I retire and so forth, but you know how that is, kind of thing. I guess one of the things I'm interested in and have been over the years is I would like to get a better licensure law for counselors in Nebraska.
Oh.
Licensure laws are done at the state level. At the national level, we have an accrediting national certified counselor. But that doesn't do anything for the legalization of counseling.
Is that a governmental agency of some sort?
No, it's
Academic?
a professional organization. And a licensing law for counseling protects the public from incompetent people providing services. One of my frustrations in my profession is it seems to me like several different groups of people in our society use the word counselor. And I think that makes it confusing and difficult for the public to understand what to expect. And I would like to have a licensing law similar to the legal profession, the medical profession, the nursing profession, several other caregiving professions have licensing laws, so that when you and I go to a person for help, we know that they have some competency or they wouldn't be there.
Yeah. One can hurt the other if we don't have...
That's right. And it does 2 things. It protects the public from incompetent, untrained people, and I think it would give the counseling profession some status and some recognition in terms of the contributions that they're providing. So yes, I am interested in that, and I would like to accomplish that before I fade away from this activity completely.
And as we leave our visit in 1990, Gale Oleson is still actively involved in education, has been for over 30 years, and doesn't have any immediate plans to do anything else, right?
No, that's right.
It's been, as usual, a pleasure to get together and chat, and in this rather special way, I thank you for coming and sharing your feelings and your ideas with us and our reflections today, Gale.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Our guest on this hour has been Dr. Gale Oleson, counselor of many, many years here for students and faculty and lots of people here on our campus. And what we've been involved with for the past hour is preparing a tape that's going to be involved in our two areas here on our campus, in our library and in our alumni center, for a variety of purposes, hopefully in the years to come. Another in our edition called Reflections in Time.